Good morning. Give me just a minute to finish setting up a couple things, and we will get on our way with this. This is going to be a little bit longer than normal, but my goal is to be done before noon, hopefully by quarter after 11 or 11:30 at the very latest. So, okay, screen sharing. That one. Okay, can you hear me all right and see the screen that I'm showing? Okay, very good. We've got a good amount of stuff to cover today, so I'm going to go ahead and get us started. No, I can't hear you. Not sure if I can. Let me see if I can give you. Let's see. Coordinators, attendees. Doesn't look like I can give you permission to use your mic at this point. So hopefully they'll add that in at some point. But we'll work with it. All right, so let me minimize this window and we can get started. All right, so you know who I am. Today we're going to talk about Fog Server. This is something I've been working on lately at my day job, and so I've been continuing to experiment with it on the side. I figured it would be a good idea to bring it into a webinar and cover it here as well. So today we're going to look at what Fog Server is, what it's used for, how to install it, and actually doing an install and taking an image from an existing VM and deploying it to a new empty VM. So there are a few parts of this that are a little on the time-consuming side that will take a few minutes. I will try to give you a heads up on those, so if you need to go get coffee or use the bathroom, then you can jump up during those times and do what you need to do. So, what is Fog Server? Fog stands for Free Open Ghost. It's an open source alternative to commercial solutions such as Norton Ghost, Suite, and Acronis. As you can guess by the name, Fog is a client server system. It's used extensively by schools and other organizations that need solid functionality without paying the high price of the commercial solutions, which they're not cheap. All right, what is it used for? Fog Server is used for deploying operating system images to computers. This is especially useful when an organization has many identical machines and they're all going to be using the same operating system and other software. Fog can also be used to join computers to an Active Directory domain and to add printers. So basically you can get a setup going where you can push out an image to a new computer and it will be joined to Active Directory. It will be able to print right from get-go, and everything should be good. So, next slide. How do we install Fog Server? So the next several slides will break down the process a little bit, and then we'll actually start going through the install. one of the great things about these webinars is that you can watch the videos after the fact. So if you need to pause while you're actually doing something, you can go back and do that and be able to duplicate what I'm doing here to a large degree. So since we have previously installed an Ubuntu desktop, we're going to start from an already running Ubuntu desktop. I did a clean install last night, so we would be ready for this. And then we will push through this install and see how far we can get, and hopefully we can actually get all the way through without too many hiccups. So, go to the next slide. Since we've used the desktop version of Ubuntu, it's easy to just grab the installation files through your web browser. Today we're going to use a tool called Wget. And so we'll enter this command here from the command line in the downloads folder. And I'll show you that in just a moment. And then we'll extract the files using tar-zxvf. And if you just type in fog and hit tab, it will complete this for you. You hit enter. And once that's done doing the extraction, you type cd space fog, hit tab again, selecting only the one that ends with the 4, and then doing a /bin, and that'll get us where we need to launch the installer. And then continuing from the previous step, once we've got it extracted, we can launch the installer by doing sudo./installfog.sh. So, and then we'll go into some VMs and continue with this. So, this is powered off. We will power this one up. This might take a minute. I did a clone in VirtualBox of the Ubuntu desktop that I installed last night. And so hopefully this will, there we go, pop up for us. All right. And we'll get this going here. All right, so in Ubuntu desktop, the quickest way to launch a terminal is to do Control-Alt-T. And then we're going to zoom in a little bit so that everybody watching this later on can actually read it. And so we're going to start by going to CD downloads. And so now we're in that downloads directory. And we'll enter that wget command. And this will go ahead and download. This takes a minute or two, but generally it's faster than actually doing it through the web browser. So I tend to use this when I can. Hopefully someday Windows will catch up and actually have a similar tool. And we're almost there. All right, I'm going to clear the screen. Maybe. All right, so we'll see what our file is here. So we need to extract the file out of the archive. It's in a tar archive, and then it's zipped afterwards to compress it. So tar cxvf fog. All right, and then cd fog bin. Top. Show the files. And then as root, we need to execute install fog.sh. So we do sudo /install fog.sh. And I want to check one thing before I move on. Okay, that's what I wanted. All right. So go ahead and do this. Enter the password. And it will detect what type of Linux system you're using. In this case, we're using Ubuntu, so the default choice of 2 is correct. So we could just hit enter. This one, just say yes to make changes. What type of installation would you like? Normal is the default. And this is the IP address detected and handed out by NAT DHCP, which this is going to be a temporary thing until we get to the end of the installer, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. So just accept the default on that. Leave the network interface at the default there. Let's see. Would you like to set up a router address for the DHCP server? Yes. And we'll leave that as the default they give us. Handle DNS. Yes. And this one we do need to change to 10. Whoops. Else if I turn numlock on. 10.0.2.15. Enter. Fog. Would you like to use Fog server for DHCP service? We're going to actually do yes on this. And we don't need to install language packs. Donate time. No, we don't want to do that. Okay, so at this point, it goes through and it displays you a list of the settings that have been selected and asks if we want to continue. Say yes. And this is where it takes a while. So if you need to get up, we've probably got about 4 or 5 minutes before this is going to be done. And then we'll move on to the next segment. And I'm going to go see if somebody's here in the parking lot. I will be back in just a moment. Hang tight. Can you hear me, Steve? I had some technical difficulties on my end, and I'm not sure things are working correctly. Okay, so I had to restart Chrome. Hopefully you can see the screen again. It probably locked up on you for a few minutes there. I am not entirely sure why, but we will keep pushing forward. All right, so when it prompts you for the MySQL password and whether it's blank, say yes to that one. Okay, good deal. I'm glad to know that it's good on your end. Okay, so at this point, we are most of the way done with the installation. But this particular version of Fog has a glitch with the installer program. So we need to come back over here. And I need to do a new terminal. And I'll blow up the text here so you can hopefully read it on your end. Make it easier. Okay, so the installer, for whatever reason, does not create the database that we need. So we need to launch MySQL from the command line. So it's sudo MySQL. Enter the password. And we can check this here to verify that it's not working. And we'll say show databases with a semicolon. And there's no database called Fog, all lowercase in there. So we need to do create database Fog with a semicolon. One row affected. Then we hit the up arrow twice and do show databases. And it's showing a Fog database. So we can exit here and get rid of that window. And now we can navigate to this URL here. So we'll open trusty Firefox. Maybe. There we go. So 10.0.2.15/fog. Management. Make sure I got that right order. 2.15 should be good there. And so all we need to do from here is click the install/upgrade now. And it says install/update successful. So at this point, we drop back to the command line and we can hit enter and it will do the remainder of the installation process. And this might take a minute or two. Okay, so it gives us the username and password. We can come over here to Fog, click the link to get to the login page, and we can do Fog as the user and password as the password. And we're not going to remember that. All right, so I set this up with a 100 gigabyte hard drive, virtual hard drive, which since most virtual machines that I make are less than 10 gigs in size for their virtual hard drive, I figured this would be good enough for the demo. So across the top, we've got our different icons, and if you hover over, you can see what they're for: user management, host management, group management, image management, storage, snap-in, printers, services, task management, and report management, configuration, and then of course exit. So there are a few settings we need to change inside Fog, and then we've got to go back and do some editing of a configuration file. And this is one great thing about a webinar is, especially using the software I'm doing, you can go back and watch this later and kind of poke around in the video and make sure you're following along and not missing something. And hopefully I don't miss anything as we go through this, but I'm not going to make any promises. Okay, so first thing we're going to do, blow this up a couple sizes larger, and we are going to go to Fog configuration. And as my cheat sheet say here, we are going to look under Fog settings. I'm going to scroll down the list until we find TFTP server. And we're going to change this to a different network address, IP address. So we're going to set this to 172.16.20.2. And then we'll come down and save. And then we'll go back to the bottom, web server. And we'll use the same IP address here. 172.16.20.2. And then we need to go over to storage and click default member. And we're going to do the same thing here. And update. Okay, so now we can log out of the administration panel. We'll close that. And then we are going to edit a configuration file. Clear this and go to the top of the screen. And we're going to do sudo gedit. So we'll get a graphical notepad style editor. And the file we want to edit is /opt/fog/period fog settings, password. Okay, so center this a little bit, mainly to make it easier on myself. All right, so we are at the top of the file, and we want to replace every instance of 10.0.2. Whatever with 172.16.20.2. So we'll bring up the find and replace 10.0.2.2, replace it with 172.16.20.2, and say replace all. And then we'll do replace 2.15 with 20.2. And then we'll close that. The other part that is absolutely pertinent that we change is our DHCP range. So we want this to be 172.16.20.100, and we could actually leave the other one at 20.254. So at this point, we will save this. We can exit. I'm going to clear that screen again. And then we're going to use less/opt/fog/.fog. Hit tab. Just to do a quick verification that it is in fact seeing our changes, 20.2, 20.100, and 20.254. And everything looks good. Okay. Just want to see. Okay, so I'm going to actually shut the virtual machine down at this point. And I'm going to make a change in VirtualBox so I don't get an error message later. I'm going to say shut down. And okay, so you're seeing the interface for VirtualBox here. What we're going to do is we're going to go into settings to network. And for the primary, the first adapter here, we're going to change it from NAT to internal. And then we're going to add adapter 2. We'll enable that and set that to bridged. And what this is going to do is allow us to have internet access and do updates, but since our imaging is all going to happen over the primary adapter, we'll still be able to do that and keep it off my main network. So we'll start this back up. We'll wait for this to come up. Alrighty. So log back in, and once this comes up completely, we'll open our command line. We need to rerun the installer for fog, and then we can continue on with the next phase of the fun. Okay. Readjust the not sure why that's coming up disconnected. Let's check on this here. Well, let's do it a different way. Okay, so the 172.16.74.197 is on my main network, and I know what I missed. That's my fault. So we need to come into edit connections. And we need to actually change this to a static IP address. Okay, so hopefully this will come up and cooperate with us. And for whatever reason, it doesn't want to. And we know the second Ethernet card is working fine. All right, well, let's see. Wired 1, disconnect. Make sure. Oh, well, got ourselves a little issue here. Wired 1. So let's see here. Wired network 2. Edit. Okay, let's check this out. All right, S3 was the one that we had before. And we got to look at the hardware, the MAC address. So this is 18, D318. Excuse me. And that's listed as wired connection 2. So we need to go and look at wired connection 1, because I think that's the one I changed. That is the one I changed, so we'll do automatic DHCP on that. Take this off. And on this one, we'll change it to the settings that we wanted. Manual, add. Okay, so let's clear this again. 20.2 and 20.2. Well, so this is a trap that you can run into. The good old trap that if something can go wrong, it'll go wrong during a live demo. Haha. So, spring up. Config, so they're both down currently. We'll bring up wire connection 1. Excuse me, 74.197, that's good. And connection 2. We got 20.2, that's what we wanted to see. Okay, now we can go back to what I wanted to do 4 minutes ago. Okay, so we need to go back to downloads, fog, bin, and sudo / install fog. And this will go faster, theoretically. Continue, yes. So basically what the whole idea in this part is that we change the settings in that configuration file, and it needs to rebuild some system level files in order for everything to take effect. So once we can get through this, we're pretty much golden. But this is unfortunately a necessary step. I would hope in future versions of Ghost, maybe by the time they hit the 2.0 version, we're currently at 1.3.4. Well, hopefully by the time they hit the 2.0 version, they will have some of this hashed out so it can be changed without doing the manual editing of the text file, configuration file, to generate the other system level files. So and don't worry if you try this the first time on your own in a virtual machine and it doesn't work properly. I had to do this about 3 times before I actually got it to work. And if you do this on an actual physical machine, there are other pieces involved that you have to think about. In VirtualBox, I could do a second virtual network interface. On a physical machine, you want to start the install process with one Ethernet card plugged in, and then after you have made some of the changes, then you'll plug in your second Ethernet port to the network and set that up. It is a little bit more challenging on physical hardware, but what the idea is that you're going to run one of the network cards in your machine on a secondary network, and that will keep it separated from everything else. It also allows for the secondary network interface will allow so that you can have access to the internet to be able to do updates and whatnot. So we'll go back into Firefox and see if our management interface opened up properly with our new IP address. So 172.20.2/fog/management. This is a good sign. And log in with fog as a username and password as the password. Tell it no, we don't want to remember our password. Okay, so take a look at our network settings. So we are set to intnet, so internal network for our primary interface in VirtualBox. So what we want to do is we want to go back here to, where's my main VirtualBox? That's still hiding under here. Okay, so we are going to use this KAOS. It's a version of Linux that I've done an install on. We will verify that the network is set to internal net. And so the first thing we need to do is register the MAC address of this machine with fog. So we are going to start this, and the key we want to hit after the beginning of the boot process is F12, which will bring up the boot selection menu. And then we do the letter L for booting from LAN. This is what the settings are for VirtualBox on a real machine. You will, of course, have different settings. So we will hit F12, and we'll hit L for LAN, and with a little luck, it's got iPixie going. We are going to come down to a quick registration and inventory. And so this is booting into a very thin Linux over the network. And it's basically going to do some auto registration. And then once this is done, it'll try to reboot, and we're going to turn the machine off, and we'll go do some other things here real quick like. Okay, so back to our, no, that's not what I wanted. That's not what I wanted either. Back to our fog machine. All right, so you can see that there is a little bit of bandwidth transmission. Let's go to host management. I'll pull this up a couple levels, and we'll say list all hosts. So as you can see, we've got a host listed, and if you do the quick registration, then it will just name it by the MAC address. So let's change this. So we'll click the MAC address link. We'll change the host name to say KOS VM. And it doesn't like spaces in the names, so we'll do underscore. Currently doesn't have a host image associated. We'll update this and we'll come back here in a couple of seconds here. So, got that updated. We can come over here to image management. Create new image. And we'll say KAOS VM demo. And we can select operating system as Linux. Okay, so on this page, the other setting we need to tweak is we need to change it from single disk resizable to multiple partition image, single disk not resizable. And this naming is kind of misleading, but they didn't consult me when they named it, so we'll go with it. So we've got that set, the path, operating system. You can play with the compression level if you want. Be mindful that the higher the compression level, the slower it's going to be. So I'm going to take it down to a 4. Maybe we can speed up the process just a little bit. And click Add. Now we can go back to Host Management. List all hosts. And we'll come in here again. And we are going to select an image. There's only one available. And we will update that. And then we come over to task management. List all hosts. And you gotta be careful and actually read these. What you want to do is capture an image. So you're taking the image from the other virtual machine to the server, whereas deploy would go from the server to the other machine. So we'll say capture. Failed to create task, invalid image assigned to host. Interesting. So let's investigate. Host management. List all hosts. Come back in here again. And it didn't save our host image. Try this again. Host updated. And we'll try the task part again. List all hosts. And we want to do a capture. And we've got a task scheduled or active here. So at this point, I'm going to minimize one active task file. That's good. We will minimize the fog server part. Come back to our VirtualBox, KAOS. We'll start. And when it comes up, hit F12, boot from the LAN. And if everything goes correctly, so far so good. And this looks like it's actually going to work. I was going through this last night in preparation, and it didn't want to work the first time. So this is encouraging that this is working the first time for me. So as you can see, this is going to take about 7 minutes. Let's jump back over here to the Fog server. On the active task page, you can see they've got a progress bar. If we come back to the home page in a moment, you're going to see imaging over the last 30 days, and it's at 1. And let's see, change this to 10 minutes, and toggle this, and we should see something going on. We've got progress happening there. There we go. Now we've got some traffic here. So this is basically what you need to do to get a Fog server up and running. As soon as this is done, we'll boot my empty VM and go through the process the other way. And it looks like we may very well be on target to be done by 11:30. So, any questions so far? Is this interesting at all to you? Okay, good. I had intended originally to stick with the Linux book that I started off using for these webinars, and I got to thinking that that's an all right idea, but since I've been using this at my day job, I thought let's do a install video while it's fresh on my mind, and maybe somebody out there will find some use in this at some point. I could see where if you were running a small PC repair shop, where it would be beneficial to have a Fog server set up so that just as a precautionary measure, the first thing you do when a new computer comes in to be worked on is you clone the hard drive. And that way, no matter what you do to the machine while you've got it, you've always got the option of putting it back to the exact same state as when the person brought it to you. And this makes it, easy to do that. You could potentially upsell them to an external hard drive, and then you capture the image with Fog, and then since you don't want to be liable for their data, then you take and you dump the image off to an external hard drive, and you can hand it back to them and say, if you get in a bind and you need to go back, bring in the computer and this hard drive, and we can make that happen. And then you just reverse the process, load that image back onto your Fog server, and go and deploy that to the computer. But so it looks like we got a minute and a half left or so. I guess in other news, Daryl and I went up to Grand Rapids yesterday afternoon and went to one of our um, locations that we like to hit up there, a store called CompRenew. They do recycled computers from businesses, and they'll a lot of times have server equipment. And so Daryl ended up buying a 2U rack mount server with two dual core, or no, excuse me, two quad core Xeon processors running at 3 gigahertz apiece and 24 gigabytes of RAM. And he got a solid state for the boot drive and a spinning hard drive for the storage drive. And we're trying to figure out what we're going to do with the server, but we'll figure out something there. The other thing is I inquired about a rack to actually mount servers in. Now it looks like our image is done. And they actually had one at another store, and it was just a 12U rack server, but they only wanted $45 for it, which is a much better price than buying it brand new. So we went to the second store. It was small enough to get in my car, and loaded up and brought it all home. Okay, so coming back here, we can see our bandwidth. We can see the number of images. We can see that it's using 6.53 gigabytes out of the 100 gigabytes that we started with. And about 90 of that is available for storing images, the other 10 being allocated to the operating system. Okay, so I have shut down the VM that we took the image of, and now we can go to the clone of our system, and we'll take a look at network settings here real quick and we want to set that to internal network. And so we can go through the process again. We'll start it up, hit F12 to boot from the network, and then we'll do some things and shut it back down, do some things in fog, and then deploy our image out. So let's start this. It actually is prompting for an ISO image to do an install. We're going to say cancel and hit F12, boot from the network, and we're going to do our registration process again. And it should go through and do the registration. Attempting to register host. We'll shut it down and come back to fog. And go to host management. List all hosts. We'll change our name. We'll call this AOS VM2. Just set the host image to the one we took earlier. And update. Host updated. Go to task management. List all hosts. VM2. We want to deploy an image. And so now we've got that listed under active tasks. We'll bring our VirtualBox back up. Go back to our KAOS clone. We'll start that. And again, boot it off the network. And it should pretty much start automatically pushing that image out to this empty virtual machine. And it looks like it's working so far. So since this is going to take a couple of minutes, one of the things to know about this is you don't have to deploy to just one computer at a time. You could have, for instance, a 24 port switch, hook up computers to each of the ports, and using multicast, which I know we talked about in our networking class, using multicast, you can send an image out to multiple computers at the same time. And if you are deploying for a computer lab or something like that, you are going to save a bunch of time compared to running a Windows install on every single machine, running updates on every single machine, and doing all that kind of stuff. Usually what happens is people will prepare one, they call it a golden image, for a particular model of computer, and then they will deploy that out to multiple computers. You can have it automatically change the name, the host name of the computer, so you don't end up with conflicts on the network. And it just makes things a whole lot easier and quicker than doing it manually. So the goal of any good IT person is to automate things and make their job as easy as possible. So this is one of those tools that can enable a person to do exactly that, make their job as easy as possible and increase their productivity and the number of projects they can be working on at the same time. So this is almost done. And if everything goes well, it should restart and it should actually boot up into an operating system. Now, I'm using Linux for an example on this because it's free and it's easy to do. Generally, people use this more for Windows because Windows is actually more time consuming to actually deploy. But you can use it for Linux as well. And, if you're doing a computer lab or some such thing, this can be very beneficial. I could even see where this would be beneficial for instance, a library that has public computer terminals and they want to do a wholesale update on everything. They can prepare one image, push it out to everybody, and they're good. So there are a few other steps if you're going to do this with Windows, but we won't go into that today. So let me come back over here to Fog at no active tasks. Go back to the main page. And this should be updated. Now we've got imaging over the last 30 days, 2 computers imaged. Transmit and receive. Do transmit. Okay, well, there should be something on here, but we can let that go. And we're at 11:15. So even with a couple of hiccups that were of my own doing, we still ended up getting through this in an hour and 15 minutes. Do you have any questions about this? You may very well want to rewatch this video to have it make a little bit more sense. But I think this is a very useful piece of software. And, hopefully the word can get out there so more people get interested in using it. And, maybe we can put Ghost out of business, Norton's Ghost out of business, and, save people frustration with that product because it's overly complex and confusing. And, well, while this one does have its levels of complexity, once it's actually working, it's really rock solid. So that's why I'm a big fan of this. There are some other open source products on the market available for free, and from what I've seen of them, while the functionality is there, the polish is not. They have not made it look as nice as Fog does. So just something to keep in mind. But yeah, I mean, this is wasn't terribly time consuming to get into it. I had to make some adjustments on the fly when I was learning it initially because the only YouTube video I could find was for version 1.2.0, and they're at version 1.3.4 now. And things have changed pretty dramatically. Some settings have been removed, and the overall look of the web interface has been updated to what you saw in this video. But if you have no questions, then let's call it a day. I'm going to go out and do some work for my dad on his computer and hopefully have him happy by the time I leave. And we'll be back here in 2 weeks, and I'm not sure what the topic is going to be exactly. It will be Linux related, but we might go back to the book, and we might go to another direction and do more demos of specific software. So, all right. Well, signing out for the 4th episode of the Linux series. I will see you in 2 weeks. Have a good afternoon.